Okay, Shalom, Shavua Tov, welcome back. We have a lot to go into today. This lesson 24 needs a lot of introductory teachings from the Kabbalah. We can't do without it because Rabbi Nachman is going into that avenue. He's going that direction, and he's assuming you know the basic ideas so you can understand what he's saying. So we have to just give a general picture in order to understand and appreciate Rabbeinu's advice of being besimcha and doing mitzvot. So we're going to need the Arizal's teachings, of course, of the Kabbalah. So basically, in summary, we'll say like this, that when Hashem initially created the world, there was lechatchila, a flaw. Hashem made a defect, lechatchila, purposely he made a flaw in the initial creation, so that there should be a shattering, a blowing up, and a restarting. Okay? So the Arizal explains like this. When Hashem initially created the world, the universe, so the energy directed from Hashem to the universe is what's called sfirot. The 10 sfirot are the channel of energy used within the creation, the different parts of the creation, in order to bring about and to perpetuate the continuity of the creation. So he made 10 sfirot, but disconnected from each other. They were separate, unique vessels to receive each one a level of shefa, of bounty, which relates to their character. Like, for example, chesed received a bounty of abundance, chesed, gvura, an abundance of bounty to give restriction, tiferet, a balance, right? Netzach, hod, yesod, each one of its characteristics that we went through many times, they received a bounty. However, the flaw is like this, that in order for there to be a transfer of this bounty from the sfirot into this world, this universe, they have to work together. They have to interrelate all the sfirot together in order for things to happen. Because the world is so mixed with so much variety, so automatically everything has a mixture, an admixture of chesed and gvura and netzach and hod. So you can't have just one transferring its energy. And also, they themselves, when the chesed receives its shefa, it needs the assistance of gvura, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod to balance what it's receiving, that it can come down in a format that can be compatible. So they need each other also. So what happened was, when Hashem sent his initial energy into these 10 sfirot, they couldn't handle the intensity because it was so strong, because they were alone, they were unique. Hashem built in this flaw to teach creation, the Arizal says, that alone you can't make it. You need a Rav. You need a Chaver. You can't be a Jew all alone. I have my Judaism and I'm isolated. Judaism is based on Minyan, Achdut, Am Yisrael, Klal Yisrael. I'm a member of a bigger picture, right? Minyan, we come together, only then I can say Kaddish. There's the union of being together and this activating something, okay? Hashem did this purposely to teach mankind that humanity can only succeed if there's right al shlosha d'raim ha'olam omed al Torah v'avodah v'al gemilut chasadim. Gemilut chasadim means gomel, ligmol, to be able to do from you to another. That's the only way the world can stand. If there's no interaction between people of kindness and giving, so it'll just destroy. These sfirot received the energy, but they didn't have the capacity of giving because they were all individual. So they shattered. There was a shattering. And there's a big rule in the Kabbalah that whenever a spiritual item shatters, it does not mean it disappears. For example, you have in the laws of Tuma, a kli cheres, earthenware vessel in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, that if it received Tuma, impurity, so you can never use it again. The only way to fix it is you shatter it. Once you break it, the Tuma disappears. It disappears, there's no more Tuma. You can take the pieces, melt them again with heat and make a new pot and it's totally kosher 100%, okay? In Kabbalah, when it comes to holiness, no way, that doesn't happen. If now a vessel containing holiness. In this case, the Sfirot, they had holy energy of Hashem in them, and they shattered. So those shattered pieces of Kedusha that were in the vessels, they don't just disappear, they don't fly back up. They went shattered into the creation, spread out. Okay? So then what Arizal says, what Hashem did, is he remade 2 new 10 Sfirot, again a new chance at the creation, but this time the ability to have interaction with each other. And with this interaction, so when Hashem sends Chesed, his Shefa, immediately Chesed is connecting to Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Yisod. So he's getting it, but it's like in the term of electricity, it's grounded. It's grounded, it won't blow up. He won't have a fuse. He'll be able to take it. Gvura also, Tiferet, the energy is going through all the 10 Sfirot, and they're transferring one to another and helping each other. And that was a successful chance in the world actually existing. That's the world we have today. So now what's our mission? It's so perfect. That's a perfect picture. Our mission is to recollect the mission of the creation, as Hashem purposely made this, so that now mankind has a mission to seek out those holy sparks from the original 10 Sfirot that are shattered, and their light, their holiness, is spread throughout the entire world. Our mission is now using the second new 10 Sfirot and the ability to use them to connect to Hashem, to connect this world to the upper worlds. We now seek out these holy sparks that are spread throughout the creation. This, the Arizal explains, is the main mission of mankind. This is the mission. Even before the snake, there was evil in the world. Proof is, how is it that the snake was evil? In order for the snake to be evil in enticing Chava and Adam and making the world tainted, if he was evil, that means there was already evil. So yes, the Nachash, the snake, was the incarnate of the evil existing because of the shattered vessels. What we didn't explain is like this, that once these vessels shattered, the original, okay, so the sparks of holiness fell, but now they fell where? They fell into a domain creating evil, because now the vessel was meant to contain within it holiness. Okay? The fact that Hashem needed a vessel in order to make the creation, that the 10 Sfirot are vessels. The fact that Hashem needs a vessel, why do you need a vessel? If Hashem is everywhere and there's Kedusha everywhere, so why need a vessel? Let's just let the light from God spread throughout the entire creation. The fact that Hashem made a vessel means there's what's within the vessel, which is holiness, and what's beyond, which is without restriction. There's no holiness. The definition of holiness means geder kedusha. Kol makom sheta motze kedusha, ata motze geder erva. Rashi gives a rule. Every place you find in Torah the term for holiness, kedoshim tiyu, you should be a holy nation. What is the definition of holiness? It means I have a restriction. I know I act up to this point. Kosher, I can eat, but when it comes to only kosher food, not kosher, I stop. Marriage, kosher marriage, intermarriage is a certain point, stop. Everything in Judaism, for holiness to be defined, there's a gvul. So the Hashem creating already, there's a gvul, a border, that means outside of these vessels in the creation, there has to exist evil. So when these vessels shattered, so what did it shatter to? It doesn't contain that light anymore, so automatically what's inside the vessels gets spread out. Outside of the vessels, that goes into the creation. Because Hashem created the world, the creation. But in order for it to exist and continue, you need the 10 Sfirot. Hashem created earth, wind, fire, and everything. Fine, initial light, initial creation, or the Hashem's Dibur. But now, for the continuation of the creation and to the existence, you need the 10 Sfirot to be there. With that said, so outside of the 10 Sfirot, there's an existence of unholiness. What's outside the boundary of the vessels, the 10 vessels, and that's called unholiness. When they shattered, automatically the light within the shattered vessels went into the whole creation. Plus, that means they give strength to the side of impurity. So this is the idea that holiness is trapped from the beginning, before Adam Arishon even. There's holiness which is trapped in creation. Our job is to speak out and elevate it. That's the mission of man, the Arizal explains. How does man do that? That's the idea of mitzvot. The whole idea why Hashem sent us down to this world is in order for, obviously the final goal is to make Hashem known in the world. But now what's the actual work of the Torah and the mitzvot masim tovim? Is every mitzvah we do, we're connecting this world and the holy sparks hidden within the part of the world that we have access to. For example, the food we eat and we say a bracha over them. The tefillin we make and we have made from animal cow skin, right? And the ink from certain plants, okay? And the tzitzit from the wool, okay? And everything we have, the air we breathe in when saying a bracha and doing a mitzvot, you know, all the liquid we drink, the water, everything of interaction when doing a mitzvah has hidden in it holy sparks, okay? So this is an ongoing process from generation to generation. As each generation goes on, more and more sparks are collected with the mitzvot of the Jews. It goes to say that when Jews do averot and sins and blemish, so it detracts from the collecting of the holy sparks. But in the main, every generation advances. The question is how much they advance. For example, one generation 100 years ago, they could have advanced, let's say, 25 levels, steps in rectifying holy sparks hidden in creation. But because many Jews were not observant, let's say, or were even sinning and doing that, so instead of advancing 25 levels, they advanced maybe only 15 or 10, but there was an advancement, but very slow, because they need the collective force of all the Jewish people to do the mitzvah together in order to do the complete tikkun of what they're supposed to do in that generation. If Mashiach doesn't come, obviously, right? Mashiach comes with that game over, Baruch Hashem, that finishes everything. So now, every generation, though, is advancing. There's more sparks being collected, and this happens until Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, all the remaining sparks will be elevated. This is the goal of what we're doing here. Every mitzvah you do does an elevation of sparks. With everything in your reach, Hashem sends your way holy sparks to elevate, okay? Besides that, there's also reincarnations, gilgulim, you know, souls that have to be rectified. That's even besides this. The main, we're talking about now elevating sparks of holiness trapped in that it's collected onto that souls that have to be reincarnated and also need rectification. So they attach themselves to the holy sparks trapped in the creation. Like the story with the Baal Shem Tov and the frog, that there was a neshama on the frog, right? And also the story of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev and someone who said a bracha on a cup of whiskey, and he said, you just now, by by drinking without a bracha, concentrating, your father has to come back again. He was a spark in the wheat, that from that wheat grain was made the vodka that you drank, the whiskey that you made a bracha on, and he didn't say the bracha properly, so it caused that damage to the soul. Fine, those are stories on the side. But the main thing is every Jew, whenever they do a mitzvah, there is rectification being done. There's holy sparks being elevated. This also, Rav Nosson explains why Jews today are sent to the farthest places in the world. Never in our minds did we think Jews would get to Alaska, Jews would get to Antarctica, Jews would get to Africa in the middle of the desert, and yet Jews are found now everywhere in the world. And wherever they go, a Jew does a mitzvah, whether he likes it or not. Knowingly, unknowingly, obviously knowingly is better, but there's so many mitzvot in the Torah that a Jew can easily, even a secular Jew, he's sent in a place, even though he's not religious, and he did certain mitzvot they're even not aware about it, in order to elevate sparks that are there, that only he can rectify. Person asks, why did Hashem send me here? There's sparks here waiting for you, and only you from the time of creation. Hashem was waiting for this moment, 5,463 years after the creation, in order for you, specifically you, your combination of your nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and whatever, chaya, yechida, this certain combination of you, that you saying a bracha or doing a mitzvah in that spot, elevates that spark that only you can rectify and only you can elevate. Because again, it's an ongoing process, and the spark still until Mashiach comes. And all the mitzvah we do makes a big, big difference, okay? So now, the Arizal shows three places where this is hinted to in the Torah. One is one verse, and one verse in the whole Torah, the Arizal shows this whole process of, creation of the 10 sparks, the shattering, and the ultimate beginning of the rectification. So that's the second pasuk in the Chumash, believe it or not. The Arizal explains, "V'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom." I broke it up differently than it's really how it's normally broken up. Well, let's translate the verse. And right in Bereshit, the first pasuk in Genesis, At the beginning of the creation, Hashem, the Lord, created the earth, the heaven and the earth, and the earth was tohu vavohu. Normally it's translated as tohu, which means like void, null. Vohu is translated as void. V'choshech al pnei tehom, and a darkness upon the depths. V'ruach Elokim, and the spirit of the Lord, merachefet, is hovering or touching over the water. So Arizal explains like this. And the earth was tohu. Tohu explains as void, is an intermediate stage between the light and the shattering of the vessels. Tohu means it's going to become empty. Because there's too much light, it's like right before the shattering, it can't contain it, so it's really considered empty. Vohu, the Arizal explains, is bo hu. He in it is he found. Bo, he says, is the beginning to rectify the sparks of the shattering of the vessels. So already in Tova Vohu, the Arizal shows is hinted to right before the shattering. And the rectification, vohu, means we want to have in it again to rebuild vessels with those shattered sparks to be in it again, to collect them. Yeah, can you believe that's always like, because he's going to explain the shattering on later on in the pasuk. Watch, okay? Okay, so Aritzakta Tovavo, To, he says, is before the shattering. Vo is the rectification, the final rectification of the shattering. Choshech al pnei tehom is the actual shattering. There's now darkness on the teps of the tehom. He says in the word tehom, you have their mavet, ha-mavet, ha-mavet, mem, okay? Tehom, tav, hey, vav, mem, is the death. The darkness over the death, meaning death, the Arizal interprets as a vessel losing its light. That's what's called death. It's not like a death in Judaism is not the end. It's a stage. So too, a shattering of the vessel was a stage that has to be rectified. So choshech al pnei tehom, the darkness, which is choshech, also is velo chasachta et bincha et yechidecha. Choshech is like to prevent. In other words, the reason of the shattering, because they couldn't give the 10 initial sfirot. They were able to give, they were able to receive the light, but they had no interaction. Because they had no interaction, they had no ability to give. So it's choshech. In other words, chasach, you're preventing. That's choshech, that's the darkness. Al pnei tehom, on the depths, in other words, the shattering, which lead to death, hamavet. And now the result is, v'ruach Elokim, the spirit of the Lord, merachefet. The Arizal explains the word merachefet, which translates again as hovering, is, take a look at the words. You take the first and last letter, that's met, death. And the middle is what's called rachaf. Rachaf is the 200 rapach, the 288 sparks. There's what's called, from all the shattering of the 10 vessels, you have 288 main sparks, and they break up to billions and billions and millions and millions. But there's 288. Why this number 288? So the Zohar points out 288 rachaf is gematria ibur. Ibur, right? Am I correct? 70 plus 10, that's 90. Plus bet, resh. Okay, you have 88, 288. So ibur is the gestation period, the pregnancy stage. So it's like the Arizal explains, merachefet means met, rachaf, it died. In other words, the 10 vessels shattered. That's like a death. And now, okay, so now what? Now is pregnancy stage. What is pregnancy stage? The sparks now are planted in the earth like seeds. When you plant seeds in the earth, what initially happens? They rot. Okay? It's a rotting stage, but it's really like a pregnancy stage. It's a preparation for the growth of the new tree, the new fruit, the new plant, right? And for that you need water. So ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, on the water, because you need to water them. Al pnei hamayim, in other words, on the face of the water, meaning water is needed here. The idea of water, in other words, it's the analogy of comparing the sparks that are planted in the earth, because on the aretz was all this. On the aretz was tohu vohu choshech al pnei ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim. But the verse started in aretz. He started with the verse aretz. So the mayim and the aretz are working together to cultivate these seeds. So the Arizal is explaining that the sparks are like planted, and they grow, and they're waiting for a Jew to come to take them, to pluck them, and to use them, to utilize them, to reconnect them to their source.
What means water?
Water, the idea of water, when you plant a plant.
But what's the name?
The nimshal obviously is the meat of the Torah, the kedusha. The watering, in order to grow it, is the good. Eretz is called Eretz is tuma. In this case, the Eretz is tameh, is impure, and the Mayim is the holiness, active, accessible, while in access to the world, to elevate what's in the Artziyut. Okay. So that's the Arizal shows that everything is hinted to in the very second pasuk in the Torah, to show even before the story of Adam and Chava and the snake, this is the goal of the creation. Okay, Adam was supposed to do a few mitzvot, not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, to watch the gan, pikudin da'aseh, right? Lota aseh, he had also mitzvot aseh, right? We know that he learned Torah in the gan, but he was warned when we said, don't eat from the fruit. If he would have followed that, the world would have reached rectification. But the kichug was so strong, the prosecution to get Adam to sin was so strong, he fell into that. And we're here trying to fix in order to finally elevate all these sparks, which other tzaddikim tried to finish already. They tried to finish the completion of the tikkun of the world many times. The Baal Shem Tov tried, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai tried, the Arizal tried, right? Moshe Rabbeinu tried. Many tzaddikim tried to bring the final tikkun of collecting all the remaining sparks. But not yet, not yet. It's not the time. It's not the time. It's not the time. Okay. So this is the first place the Arizal shows in the first place in the Torah that the Arizal explains is hinted to this process. The Arizal then brings two other places where we see this idea. This is very deep. I'm new to this. It's scary. They say in those who learn Kabbalah that learning these concepts in depth is a dangerous time. The person has to be very careful, on guard. He needs extra protection when learning these things in depth. We're not going in depth at all, but just to know about these concepts from outside. Okay? The Arizal shows this idea of the shattering in two places in the Torah, in the book of Bereshit. One is by the sheep that Lavan gave to Yaakov, and the second one, is by the list of the kings of Edom. Okay? The first one is in Parashat Vayeshev. Am I right? Not Vayeshev. 1 second. Vayetze. Sorry, Parashat Vayetze. That Yaakov works for Lavan, and then he requests his wages. Finally, even my wages. So even then, Lavan was very tricky, and he left because Yaakov made a very tough condition. I want all the type of sheep who are not like this and not like that, which was to the benefit of Lavan. He said, it'll be like that. Rashi says even, Lavan left him these sheep, but the weak ones, the ones who were sick and old and everything. And Yaakov knew who was going to do that. So Hashem, the Arizal explains, showed Yaakov how to get what's rightfully his stolen from Lavan, but by rearranging the creation. Unbelievable. So we see that there were three types of sheep. There were sheep that were called akudim, sheep that were called nekudim, and sheep that were called verudim. Okay, ultimately, what belonged to Yaakov? All three were to belong to Yaakov. But in these and what Lavan made difficult is that he gave him sheep who were not akudim, nekudim, verudim. He gave them, they were different color to make it almost impossible according to nature. How are you going to have to reproduce sheep with akudim, which we're going to explain? Akudim means that they have lines on their ankles, on the four ankles of the animal's feet. There was like a line. Okay, the rest of the animal was white, let's say, and it was like a black stripe around the ankles, the four ankles of the four legs of the animal. Okay, that's akudim. Nekudim is they were spotted. There were dots, not connected, not lines, but dots at nekudim. Okay, verudim is that there were mamash lines of color, black lines on the animals, on the sheep. Okay, and Lavan didn't give Yaakov these colored animals. He gave them animals which were not this color. So that's why the Torah says that he made a trick. He took sticks of certain fruit trees and peeled them in a way that when the animals would see them, so it would be etched in their subconscious, unconscious, and go in their genetics. So that way, when they would reproduce, they reproduce when they have that image in their head, in their subconscious. That was like a scientific, technical thing. But the Zohar says it's much more deeper than that. The Zohar, so the Arizal teaches that Hashem wanted to get what's rightfully his from Lavan, because Lavan represents evil. Lavan represents the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Lavan himself represents the evil trapped in this world. Lavan himself is the representation of Noga, good and evil, good and evil. That's the idea of this world. This whole world represents Lavan, right? Lavan, and we're going to see also Edom, Esav. Edom is an extension of Lavan. In other words, coming up, we see the 10 kings of Edom, which are descended from Esav and Amalek, let's say. So they are an extension of the bad found in the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The Torah says Haman, who represents Esav and Amalek. Where is he hinted to in the Torah? Haminayet, it's going to be from the tree that I told you not to eat. Did you eat? Hashem told Adam, warned him, you ate from could it be from the tree that I told you not to eat that you ate from? Did you eat from it? So Haminayet is Haman. The letter is Haman. Haman represents Esav, Edom, Amalek. They're all the same package, okay? And he is from the evil of the tree of good and evil. Lavan is like the forefather of that. He is the good and evil. Good, because from Lavan came Rachel and Leah, and Bilhah and Zilpah. The mothers, the matriarchs of the Jewish nation, okay? From Lavan. Aramaic, which we elevate by learning Gemara, we learn Zohar in Aramaic. All that is the good found in Lavan. But Lavan has the good and evil. So in the Torah is hinted in two places the idea of the shattering of the vessels, because that's the whole, the thing is, the whole idea of the shattering of this holiness is trapped in evil. That's our battle daily against Lavan and Esav that we suffer from. We're in Galut, we're in the fourth exile, which is called Galut Edom, meaning our mission here, more than any other time in history, is we have a lot of hard work in elevating the good trapped in. This is why we're going to give Rabbeinu's advice coming up at the end of this. We're going to see how necessary and how powerful is Rabbeinu's advice for doing all this, okay? So let's go back to Yaakov Avinu. The Arizal writes, explains, Rav Chaim Vital explains what the Arizal taught him, that the idea of these three types of sheep that were supposed to belong to Yaakov are the three stages of the vessels. So akudim, where you have the animal and it has stripes on its ankles as if it's tied. Akud translates as he's ne'ekad, because Rashi points out the black line was in a space like when you handcuff somebody or handcuff an animal. Where do you handcuff them? Not above, because they can still walk, or by the hands. You don't tie them here, you tie them here, because the hands are the ones that are the problematic. Where the final part of the arm or the leg, that's what needs to be guarded. So the idea that they had black stripes on that edge part indicates being tied together. So the Arizal explains that akudim represents the energy of the 10 sfirot when they're still above in the world of Atzilut and beyond that, in the infinite light before coming down. They're still bound together. They're still together at the root before the creation. That's the representation of the first group of sheep that were supposed to come to Yaakov Avinu. The second is called Nekudim. Nekudim is the problem here. Nekudim represents the energy sent into the 10 sfirot, but just like dots are not connected. See, the animal had dots on them, Nekudim. What does it mean, dots? That there's no connection between the dots. You can't connect the dots. They're not connected. The animal is white with black dots and they're disconnected. They're not connected. That represents the Nekudim, the 10 original 10 sfirot that were individual. They were separate. Okay? And that, from the Nekudim came the smash, came the crashing of the vessels. Virudim, which is the animal which has stripes. A stripe is not just dots. It's now I've connected so many dots together, they can make like a stripe. That is the rectification of joining now the sfirot together in order that the energy should be in a collective format and be able to give off the benefit from that to the universe, to the mankind. Okay? So Hashem showed Yaakov all three stages, okay, in his animals. Why did he do this? For him to regain the holiness trapped by Lavan, because Lavan did this in order that Yaakov should not get the holiness trapped that belongs to him. That was the whole idea of Yaakov Avinu and his sheep. So Hashem showed him how to go backwards in the procedure, how to develop sheep that are all three levels, Virudim, Nekudim, in order to get to Akudim, to go backwards, to go from the source, in order to reform animals that according to the laws of nature are not supposed to be like that. According to nature, Lavan gave him brown animals or totally black or totally white, and no freckled, no spotted, no lines, no akudim, nothing. So according to nature, he has no way to do it. So Hashem taught him a way how to redesign creation, the Arizal explains. I'm going to give you the secret how to redesign creation, to give you all three types of sheep, to show you how to get three types of sheep in order to activate all three levels, the Birudim, in other words, to make a final rectification. From there to go back to Nekudim, the spotted type of animals, and from there to go back to the source in Akudim, which are the ones that are like this. And by that, you by tapping into the root, you now can get these three types of animals. I'll give you Akudim, and in other words, the ones that are ankled, the ones that are spotted, and those that have stripes, they will come to you. Only those ones will get. So he did that. The Arizal explains this was taught. This teaching is hinted to in Yaakov Avinu's sheep of Lavan, because this is the representation of the battle we have in this world, and that a Jew doing devotion like Yaakov Avinu is called Yaakov Shlema, the complete one. Yaakov is the representation of a complete tzaddik, a complete man. It says right on the heavenly throne, on the Kisei HaKavod, is the face of a man, and that face of the man is Yaakov Avinu, right? It's like when Yaakov slept on the place, on the Vayishka, Parashat Vayetze, the beginning, so he had the dream, Yaakov had the dream. When he woke up, what did he say? Achen yesh Elokim b'makom hazeh, Hashem, Elokim or Hashem? Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. So the books, they say, Achen is what? Aryeh, Chruv, Nesher. He saw the heavenly throne, Yaakov Avinu. He said, Achen, I knew that there was the image of the lion on the heavenly throne, and the Chrubim, the Chruv, and the eagle, the Nesher. Ava Anochi, Aleph Nun Chaf Yud, means again, the Arya, the lion, the Nun, the Nesher, the Chruv, and Yud Yaakov. Anochi, that I'm also on the heavenly throne, my face on the heavenly throne. I didn't know. So, Darizal says, this lesson of teaching us about, before the creation, the stage of the spirit and the energy, the mistake, the purposely planned mistake of Hashem, the accident of the shattering of the vessels, and the rectification of having the spirit work together, that was hinted to in the sheep, specifically of Yaakov Avinu, because he represents that. He's the representation of the Jewish people. We're called Bnei Yaakov, Bnei Beit Yisrael, the children of Israel, the children of Yaakov. That's why we're named after him. So it's in his story with his sheep leaving Lavan. That's the idea of leaving the klipot and picking up the holiness, the sparks. It was, the Torah tells us, this whole story indicated in the sheep of Yaakov Avinu. The second place that the Torah gives us, really the third, which is really the second, is where it lists the 8 kings, really 7 plus 1 kings of Edom before kingship started in the Jewish nation, starting by Shaul HaMelech. Okay, so the Torah lists at the end of Vayishlach, this was the first king of Edom, and he died, and he was replaced. And this one was the next king, and he was died and replaced. So Arizal teaches that these 7 kings of Edom represent the 7 sfirot, the lower sfirot of the 10, before being shattered. They're represented as the kings of Edom, because Edom, being evil, is not someone to give, he's someone to take. So because they had the kings of Edom had no interrelationship, they're considered to be dead. Because a shattering of the vessel is called death. That the light goes down to a lower level, it doesn't die totally, but the death is that it left its present place. So the king of Edom is representing that the initial sfirot were just receivers. They weren't able to give. So they received so much light and they couldn't contain it, so they shattered. That's like the death. That's hinted to in the 7 kings. Number 8, which is really Malchut, it's not mentioned that he died. Of this, the 8th king, it says about him, right? Hadar. It says, "Vayimloch tachtav Hadar v'shem iro pa'u," and the 8th king that ruled after Hanan ben Achbor was Hadar, and it says where he's from, Pa'u, and the same name of his wife. Okay, and it doesn't say that he died. So the Arizal says this last one is Malchut, because it's called Malchut Edom. Edom crashed, each went, and then it went to the final sphere of Malchut, which is now connected to the earth. And because the sparks went down to the earth, and that's the domain of evil, So we call it the kingship of Edom. Malchut Edom is on the name of Hadar, number 8.
But this is already the Tika?
This is the Nikudim. This is the stage of the shattering. In the death, the Arizal says, the Torah is telling us of these 7, 8 kings, showing us also that the shattering of the vessels, the work to rectify them, will involve us having to deal with Edom. So the Torah hints to the idea of the mentioning of the kings of Edom. Why the Torah is telling us about the kings of Edom that ruled before the Jewish people. So our results, it's a symbol also. They're representing what happened even before the creation. The 10 sfirot, we didn't explain why there's only 8 here, 8, 7, which are 8 and not 10. Okay? We didn't have to explain that also soon. That they died. Meaning the light of holiness was not able to be contained within these vessels because they're not giving. Because there was a built-in flaw, the kelim themselves is considered problematic. Because if you're so perfect, why can't you contain the light? You can't contain the light because there's a flaw in you. If there's a flaw in you, that means you're representing evil. We said originally, a sphera is meant to contain the holiness within it. That means whatever's outside of the vessel is considered not holy. In this case, because the vessel's shattered, Sof Ma'aseh b'machshava tchila, retroactively, it showed us that these initial vessels were not 100% holy. In fact, they were evil. Proof being, they shattered. They were able to get the light. They were able to interact. If there's an interaction, that's a problem. It's a flaw, and we call that flaw evil. So the keli itself was problematic. So they're called the death of the kings of Edom. Are another term the Arizal says for the shattering of these vessels. Okay? Unbelievable. Now, why are there 7, 8, and not 10? Chochmah and Bina, the first 2, are, and they also receive, but Chochmah and Bina, yeah, they're more, they go up. They're light. In many lessons, especially like lesson number 36, when there's a shattering of vessels, the lower 7, there's a shattering below. But Chochmah and Bina are never touched. They go up. They go right to the Keter they're connected to. So even though, yes, there was a shattering of Chochmah and Bina, it was external, and poof, there was nothing to handle. So we don't have light from the 2 original of the 10 that went downwards. They went upwards, okay? But part of them did go down in that. So there's 8 sfirot here. So we have 7 lower ones. If we take the last one, Hadar, he's Malchut. Count upwards. You get up, you start with Chesed. The one right above is called Da'at. Da'at is the combination of Chochmah and Bina. They themselves are untouchable, but what they caused, yes, to be Da'at, that did go down, and that's the first one. He's the first of the 8 kings mentioned here. What was his name? The first one is called Bela ben Beor. Bela, or Nivla. He's swallowed up. Okay, the Da'at is swallowed up with the other 7 below him. Bela ben Beor, okay? There's a lot of depth in this. We didn't touch this. So now, again, the shattering is hinted to in Lavan's case of Yaakov, and the kings of Edom that we are now under exile under them. The kings of Edom being descended of Esau, but the result represents that this happened already in the beginning of the creation to show that ultimately the evil we're going to have to face in order to finally elevate the sparks of Mashiach's coming will be under the Galut of Edom. So already the beginning of the creation is hinted the death of the kings of Edom that they took. They're called the deaths of the kings. They're going down their energy going down to the last one, Hadar. He has the energy of these other ones that didn't receive the light, but it doesn't disappear. It doesn't puff and disappear. It went down into the last one. And we're now under Galut. In other words, Esau gets his strength from that 8th king of Hadar. The energy that Esau has to subdue us in Galut still, and that the Jewish people are submitted and subdued, and there's no Beit HaMikdash, and there's no Geula and everything, it's due to the energy that Edom has, thanks to these sparks trapped in his domain. And our goal now is to elevate and elevate and elevate. That's the mission of a Jew in this world. Comes Rabbi Nachman, and he teaches every Jew in the world can elevate the holiness trap, no matter how low the level is, by doing the mitzvot with joy. Oh, this is unbelievable. Because the Arizal teaches normally what is able to extract the holiness trapped in the evil, something called pitum aktoret. Pita Maktor, which we didn't go into it at all, we'll go into it hopefully very soon, is the normal procedure according to the Kabbalah, which kills, in other words, kills the evil and extracts the holiness. Comes Rabbeinu and says that as much as Pita Maktoret can extract the holiness from the evil, it's still missing in being able to elevate that holiness up to the beginning, to the Keter. For that, Rabbi Nachman comes and teaches us that today, due to the unbelievable attack of Edom and Amalek and everything we're going through, that even 1 second I can extract from them with Pita Maktoret, the next second they can just switch me around and I can lose it. So Rabbi Nachman warns there's one way, as soon as you extract, to immediately bring it up, and that's doing the mitzvot b'simcha. So Rabbeinu teaches, that's how Rav Nosson explains this in Kitzur Likutei Moharan, saying the Ktoret with concentration. Rav Nosson writes in the Bridge Likutei Moharan on this lesson, saying Pita Maktoret with concentration brings a person to joy. Okay, you got that? And this joy activated through the Pita Maktoret. We're not coming to go against Chas V'Shalom the Arizal in any way, or the Zohar and the power of the Ktoret. The power of the Ktoret is still there. But now it all gives me also a powerful benefit of releasing joy, because Rabbeinu teaches the idea of holy sparks being trapped is reflected in sadness. Atzrut. The sadness we're going through is reflecting that the sparks are trapped, and the sparks need us to elevate them. When a person is being attacked with sadness, it's not that he has a problem, he has a mental problem, an emotional problem, and he's going through difficulty, he was raised that way or this way. A Jew is being attacked with sadness is because he has work to do. There are sparks begging him subconsciously to elevate them. And they're so trapped, the only way to express to this person his work to do is he's being attacked with sadness, so he can fight it with joy in order to elevate the holy sparks. So Rabbeinu brings in this whole bouquet together. Pita Maktoret, he says, like the Arizal teacher, we'll go into this in the next class, is what kills the klipot in order to release the holy sparks. And the joy resulted in Pita Maktoret. And in general, the joy that a Jew has in doing mitzvot takes that mitzvah, that holy spark, so the spark that trapped in, the Ibor 288 sparks, whatever it is, whatever it's rooted in, and brings it up all the way up to the root. And then once it's there, it's stuck there. It doesn't come back down. It's rectified. Okay? Until then, they can find ways to bring it back down. That's why Rabbi Nachman says simcha of the mitzvah is needed, because it's like shaking a rope at the bottom of the rope. When you shake a rope at the bottom, it shakes the entire rope up to the top. So the simcha takes the mitzvah and now, more than that, a person has 25 days that he's sad in doing hidavins without sad joy. Comes along one day that he daven b'simcha, it also elevates all the days that he didn't do b'simcha, it elevates them also. That's how powerful this simcha is. So this is the main thing of this lesson, that we have to elevate and complete the holiness. The holiness is not complete until those sparks are elevated. That's our job. Whether we like it or not, that's why we're here. Our job here is to elevate sparks. The main way to elevate them is b'simcha, because they're being trapped is reflected in sadness that a person experiences in this world. And B'ezrat Hashem, by being b'simcha, and Rabbeinu's first advice in how to be b'simcha is by saying the Ktoret with kavanah. But that's how Rav Nosson explains it in the Kitzur Likutei Moharan. Saying the Ktoret with kavanah of concentration, Pita Maktoret, it's in the Siddur, right? That leads to joy. It's mentally to joy. It brings to joy, and that joy activated, you put it in mitzvot performance, and B'ezrat Hashem, things go up. We should be zochet to fulfill this in simplicity, B'ezrat Hashem. All right? That was a very